Welcome, everybody, to our initial brand new podcast, Fall Starts with Bill Blank and Chris Shipley. Good evening,
Inaugural.
inaugural. Good evening, everybody. We are broadcasting live on this new system to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So hope to see a lot of people log in. Bill, how are you tonight?
I'm swell. I can't stop looking at the back. Did you ever notice that when you do this, you kind of look at yourself all the time?
I constantly will stroke my beard and then check out my beard lines to make sure
Yeah, it's
all
better than a mirror.
I did that once in a call for work one time, and I kept doing this, and finally the guy goes, "Hey, Chris, your beard looks fine. You can stop. You can stop stroking it." I was like,
Nervous
So-
energy.
"Right? I know. I can't help it." And I look really good in this light, so
Yeah, I gotta figure out the light thing. There's a light right above me, and if I turn that on, it's like I'm backlit, so I look weird then. And then, yeah, I got to get one of those ring light things or something.
Yeah, because I'm a 15-year-old girl on TikTok. I got to have a ring light and and a whole set. Got made fun of, but that's okay.
Who made fun of you?
My 23-year-old kid. I think it was more just jealousy because I'm much better at this stuff than she is. But that's a whole nother episode.
Right on.
So for everybody that's joining us, Bill reached out to me, and we had talked a little bit about doing a podcast before with him. And it's funny how things evolve. We had started off with maybe just about sports and Cyclones and Hawkeyes and things like that. And we thought, you know what, let's make it better. Let's make it better. And Bill came up with a great idea to talk about men's struggles, right? And mental health and some challenges, but along with some triumphs too. So but first let's introduce each other. Bill, why don't you introduce everybody that may not know who you are and what you do and what you're about.
What I do and what I'm about.
And we only have an hour, so
yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna turn into the Bull Durham monologue. I believe in the soul, the God. Well, I'm Bill Blank. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've had to. COVID has caused me to shift some gears here and there, and a divorce, and a number of different things is kind of why I thought to maybe do this theme for this podcast, kind of focusing on the mental health of men, because most of us just aren't comfortable talking about it, admitting there's anything, there's a lot of societal, I guess, hurdles placed upon us. And the last thing I want to do is make it sound like there's some kind of plight. I just want to normalize it a little more, there's been times where I've told people, yeah, I got just matter of factly, I got therapy at 5:00. I got, I can't do whatever. I got therapy. So you just don't hear people openly. Everybody says I got a doctor's appointment. Nobody says I got to go to therapy, and especially men. So I think this is a way that, people can normalize things. And in fact, as soon as when I put it out on Facebook, what we were doing, I got a phone call that night from a guy who was just one thing he said was the most toxic thing I ever heard in my life was just be a man. Just be a man and buck up, pull up your bootstraps, just be a man about it, and there's ripple effects to that. That encompasses a lot of things, so that we can dive into where that goes. But what about you? Why is this something?
It's important to me. It's important to me because I was talking to a gentleman that I met for coffee today. He's going to do a podcast for a charitable organization he's involved in. He wanted to ask me some questions, and he asked me why I am so vulnerable sometimes on social media and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was after I went through my first divorce in 2008. I was a miserable person. I was not a good husband. I was unhappy. I hated my life. Other than my two kids, my life sucked as far as I was concerned. And I had just kind of decided that I needed to fix myself. And I had decided that I was going to be more open about my struggles and who I was and things like that. And then later on, after going through cancer, kind of the same deal. I just wanted to I wanted to be open about how I feel about things. And looking back, I would venture to guess that probably our parents' uh, generation were wanted no part of that, right? They
Mhm.
brought
Mhm.
up in that. But I had a dad that was always kind of open about that stuff. He was pretty. I always joke and say he was probably the smartest man I knew with a seventh grade education. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
He was always open about that kind of stuff, uh, and maybe I was a little more sensitive as a kid because I grew up in a home that was more sensitive. But um, that's kind of why I want to do it. Is I want people to know it's okay that you're struggling, and if that well, I'll tell you what really bothers me are these fucking people that are like, oh well, I'm an alpha man and I don't have any feelings and blah blah blah, and that's what's causing the world to go to shit. You know what?
Feelings.
Right,
Your feelings are what's
right,
wrong.
right.
Yeah, your
Uh,
feelings are the problem.
no, the problem is that too many people suppress that shit and lived miserable lives that ruined other people's lives.
Well, and how exactly, anybody that says that, it always cracks me up. Okay. Well, how are my feelings affecting you exactly? Like,
Right.
what's the direct effect? Oh, this is what's wrong with. Okay, so how did my feelings affect your life yesterday? I'm curious. Can you explain that to me? Because they didn't.
Right. Yeah. If anything, I was able to get my feelings out, so I didn't then turn around and take it out on you the
Yeah,
next day.
yeah. You're what it is. It's. I don't want to say it's a jealousy thing. You know, it's not that. It's not quite that thing where like the people you tell kids, well they only make fun of you to make themselves feel better.
Right.
It's not quite that kind of thing, but it's in that same neighborhood. It's kind of like I would venture to say that many of the people that are saying that are struggling with the fact that they don't have any feelings about certain things. Like maybe they think something's wrong with them,
Right.
you know, because they don't feel anything. They see people with so much empathy and things like that, and they don't feel it. Maybe they think something's wrong with them. Or maybe they're just sociopaths at the same time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
No.
that's possible. I mean, there's been many a times where, I sit around and I almost feel guilty that I'm not more upset about something than I am. Like I
Yeah.
should feel worse about this. And there's a certain amount of just being a middle-aged white male that affords me the ability to have apathy towards a lot of things. And
Right.
that's when I feel guilty is like, I'm just like, man, how many people have to face up to whatever every day. And I have the luxury of just going, you know what? I'm just not going to pay attention. I
Yeah.
don't, like it
Yeah.
doesn't, nothing affects me.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna leave it. I don't have time. I'll play video games or something.
Right. And to your point, being a white middle-aged man, I I think sometimes it's really hard to put ourselves in somebody else's point of view that is doesn't experience the world like we do.
Mm-hmm.
I 2020 is a great example of that. I I had a conversation with a guy one time and I was like, I don't know that I've ever and listen, you won't find a more bigger supporter of police officers and first responders in that they do a job I would never want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't have any idea whatsoever what it's like to be in a situation where I might be judged because of what I look like and not know what kind of person is on the other end of the car that got pulled over or whatever else. I have no idea. I don't have any idea what kind of a conversation I would have to have with my son
Mhm.
about those things. Now, that doesn't mean that every single police officer or first responder out there is like that, but it has happened, and that slight percentage chance they have to prepare them for that. I don't have any idea what that's like. So for me to not be sympathetic to that is kind of hypocritical. Does that make
Well,
sense?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, hypocritical may be the wrong word. It's probably more of I don't know, selfish almost.
Yeah,
It's like
that's a better word.
it's to even. I mean, we're in this place now where we don't get to have a plight. Like, we just don't.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of paying for the sins of our fathers, so to speak, involved with that. And I'm okay. But what bothers me is knowing all this. How do I still have all this anxiety all the time? How am I still waking up in the morning feeling just not right?
Right.
Like, I went 15 years, and the biggest reason that I wanted to do this, and where my experience comes from, is I've dealt with anxiety since I was a kid. I didn't know what it was in the beginning. I remember there was a summer, the summer going into 8th grade. So it would have been the summer after 7th grade. There was a moment where I almost got obsessed. It was like that moment. I don't know if you remember this in your life. Having survived cancer, I know it's happened, but who knows, if anything before that. But I was at that age. I was, what, 12? And all of a sudden it dawned on me that I was gonna die someday.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this.
And there was absolutely nothing I could do.
Yeah.
I was like basically bedridden the rest of that summer. And it was weird because I was a baseball player, and when you were playing Little League baseball, when you were that age, baseball season was over by about July, or the middle of June. So from June all the way up till school started again, I basically laid on the couch. Every time I ate, I threw up because I was having constant anxiety attacks, and it was all about being afraid to die. I was so afraid of death. I was getting suicidal just because I didn't want to feel that way anymore.
It's weird that I never really thought that anybody would ever experience that, but I was the exact same way. And I probably was 10 or 11 to the point where I was convinced that if I did not pray to God that he would keep me alive overnight, if I was, and my parents were not religious, so it wasn't like it was a religious fanatic thing. I just had convinced myself in my head, if I don't pray and forget to pray, I won't wake up in the next morning. And I would pray every night. And then I would go to sleep, but I would lay there wondering if it was going to work or not. And I remember one time telling my mom, said, "Mom, I'm really afraid of dying." And my mom, God love her, was not, if that's the beauty, I think, of us evolving and knowing more about this, is if my kid was to come and talk to me about that, and I would now know how to talk to them about it because I see that it's anxiety. My mom had no idea.
Yeah.
And in her first thought, she's like, well, I'll just alleviate his fear. And she said, well, you know what? Don't even worry about it because most people die when they sleep. Oh, well, that's just fucking great. Right? Like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I can't go to sleep now.
Oh, fuck.
Like that
it's like Nightmare on Elm Street. You got coffee and a Red Bull.
That did not help me at all, Mom. And that was probably a year or two of every night scared to death to go to sleep.
Really? Long, huh?
Yeah, until I finally fell asleep and it didn't happen. And I was like, well, that was bullshit. And then some other anxiety type thing filled my
Yeah,
existence.
something else took its place.
Right. Like I can remember the first time I ever heard of OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy fuck, I've had that my entire life. Like there's been times where I would sit there and I would tap my fingers. And if I didn't do it an even number of times, it would literally physically bother me that I didn't tap it 4 or 6 or 8. If it was uneven, it was going to bother me.
It's weird. I've always had a thing about even numbers too. For some reason, everything had to be even numbers. Like if I was shooting baskets, in the backyard, I had to make 2 in a row before I could quit, or 4 in a row.
Right.
3 in a row. It couldn't be 3 in a row. It couldn't be 5 in a row. So if I made that other one, I had to make 6, or I had to start over.
Right.
And I never thought of any of that, as being OCD or whatever. And the other thing about OCD that I never understood until therapy was OCD can be about thought process more than it is. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are. Can you hear my dog going nuts right now?
Yeah, that's okay.
You can. It's like obsessive and compulsive thoughts. Like you have these repeatable thoughts happening all the time. Hold on a second. I'm going to try to shut him up.
Did that work?
As my roommate's fucking with him.
Nice.
I could tell by the way the noise he was making that somebody was messing with him.
That's funny. It's funny that we both had kind of similar obstacle or just issues like that, because I just thought it was just me. I mean, I never, as a kid, I never knew what OCD was. I didn't know what ADHD was, and I don't know that I necessarily had ADHD.
Right.
But man, I would wait to the last minute to do things. I would procrastinate, and my dad would get so mad and yell and things like that. And now looking at my kids and realizing that's not the way to do it. I mean, how much more well-adjusted would I have been if my parents were aware of that type of stuff?
Sure. Or at least got you some therapy or something,
right. Yeah, because there was no therapy for me. I mean, that wasn't. And again, it was more because my parents didn't know.
They just didn't have. They did the best they could. They didn't have the tools.
Right, they didn't have the tools. And let's be honest, my parents were. My dad was 7th grade educated. My mom was less than that. I mean, I think my mom and dad got married. My dad was 18. My mom was 15.
Well, no wonder you're so fucking stupid. Jesus.
I know, right? I know. You'd think after 52 years I'd get a lot smarter, but not according to my last job where they let me go. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Well, like, I was like, my mom got me into therapy back then in 7th grade. Like when I finally kind of came clean about what was going on. And my mom didn't really know what was up, but she was an advocate of like mental health. I don't know that she went to therapy herself at the time, but she was aware and got me into therapy.
Right.
But at the time, I never knew of it as anxiety. It was never labeled. It was one of those things where, they were trying to teach me relaxation techniques and different things like that. And, almost like borderline hypnosis, you'd lay in a chair in the dark and they'd go through I could do it right now. I could walk through a room and do those stupid exercises and everybody'd think I was some kind of fucking guru or something. Or however you say that word. But anyway, it was things like that never really got labeled. It wasn't until I was 18, I was away at school, and I came home one weekend and just had like a horrible anxiety attack in the middle of the night. And I went over to my buddy's house. His mom was kind of like a second mom to me, and she was a registered nurse, and she right away was like, yeah, you're having an anxiety attack. I'm like, what's that? And then my dad, come to find out, my dad had been dealing with it his whole life. So that's when it actually got labeled to me. And then I was able, I wish someone would have given me credit when I was 11 for knowing that and giving me that label then.
Yeah.
Because the first part of the battle was labeling what it was.
Yes.
And like once it had that label, I was able to develop my own tools. Because that's the thing about at least anxiety. You kind of develop your own tools eventually, because until you come up with it on your own, people can tell you different things till they're blue in the face, but until you make some kind of connection on your own, it doesn't stick.
Right.
And for me, it was always, I could feel it in my gut when it's coming.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad at one point talking about the take the bull by the horns attitude, where, all right. And so that's kind of how I approached it. And that's gotten me through a lot of different things in life in general, where I always looked at anxiety like it was an opponent, like it was actually a physical person standing in front of me that I could fight. And so I would I still to this day do it. And I just kind of go, all right, motherfucker, not today.
Yeah.
Like,
I had that epiphany this morning.
It's kind of like, step up, bitch.
Yep.
I'm going down swinging.
Yeah. There's certain days where this morning I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm fucking done feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
Fuck that. But then, there are other days
sometimes it gets the best of you.
Yeah. Last Thursday was a bad day for me. I woke up and felt fine. And it had been a week and a half, and I I'll be transparent. I lost my job on the 9th of January. It was kind of a blind slide. As much as my wife says it'll be fine, I'm not worried about you. You'll get a job, and that self-doubt and that self-esteem starts to take hold. And Thursday morning I woke up and I was like, you know what, it's fine. You're right. We'll be good. And then I think I was sitting there scrolling through my phone, looking at LinkedIn and just scrolling through the new jobs that got posted. And I was instantly like, this fucking sucks. Like, I got to fill out this form and I got to fill all this out. And now I feel like I'm 52 years old and I'm filling out a job application. Like, this sucks ass.
Yeah.
And I was zapped for the entire day. I didn't do a fucking thing all day but lay on the couch. And I was that depressed about it. And I was like, I can't snap out of it today. And that happens. And what took hold of me was anxiety. But for me, when I was a kid, I was always just called a worrywart. You know what I mean? You worry about everything. And Thursday I was sitting there going, what happens if I get another job and they tell me I suck at it? Am I even going to be able to keep the next job that I get? Now I'm worried about that. Maybe I missed something and I didn't do something right. And now that's why I lost that job. It's in my head now. I know that's not the case. I mean, I look further into why it happened and some of the other things that I've heard. And now I realize, they weren't very honest with me when it came to the job anyways. But man, that worry and that anxiety takes hold of you, and it's really hard to break.
Well, it crushes your self-esteem. And once that happens, it's really hard to shake.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like in relationships, there's everybody's like, well, if you're not happy with yourself, you can't be shit for anybody else. And, if you can't be alone, then how do you expect to blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, so you're just supposed to be happy being alone the rest of your life? I mean, that's
right.
Who the fuck?
That sounds fucking terrible.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Of course we don't want to leave it up to other people,
right?
We don't want our self-esteem to be wrapped up in other people, and we have to know what makes us valuable.
Right.
But the problem is I don't think that most of us really know that. That tends to come from other people.
Yeah.
Other people seem to have a better idea of who you are than you do a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like people
Because
have
we have
their
blinders on. We have blinders on.
exactly. Yeah. And people have an idea of who I am, what I am, and sometimes I don't believe them, like
Right.
people will tell me positive things about myself and I'm like, there's that Midwestern humble part of you that's like, oh no, I'm not that great.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes you go, you know what? Yeah, I am pretty fucking cool, actually.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it needs to be okay to just, but
I think that helps you snap out of it, though. I mean,
yeah,
I do think sometimes anger is not necessarily a great emotion sometimes, but I do think sometimes it helps me to go, and I did it this morning, and go, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not having it today. I'll tell this story. I've told it before on a couple other podcasts. Monday nights when I was going through cancer, Mondays were chemo day, and I would come home and I found this video called "Why Do You Fail?" and it's this motivational video, and it really would make me feel better. And one of the nights, Caitlin came up and she was crying, and I was like, "What do what's the matter?" And she's like, "This sucks. Why did this happen to you? It's not fair." And I instantly got pissed, and I was like, "Nope, we're not fucking feeling sorry for ourselves. That's not happening. We're not gonna lay there and take a fucking ass kicking. So knock it off. I love you, but we're not doing that. No pity party right now. We ain't playing that shit."
Yeah.
And that was just kind of a snap of that's it. I fucking had it for the day. I'm not feeling bad anymore. Everything's going to be okay. And if I don't turn it around like that, then I won't have the energy to do what I need to do to get through the day and move on. You know what I mean? Part of what you said earlier about suck it up and just move on with the day, I think there's something to that. But only after you've recognized why you need to and what. And
yeah, it's okay to
right.
It's okay to sulk for a little bit. It's okay that it gets the best of you that day.
Right.
Or it's okay that it gets the best of you for a fucking week. But of course, we've all got responsibilities. Sometimes you can't afford to curl up in a ball. But I think we're all resilient enough in that way. I think most people end up doing what they got to do, at least to survive.
Right.
I think it just becomes a thing where it's like surviving isn't good enough, though.
No. Right. Yep. Well, what I want to do is I would love to switch gears and maybe let's talk about what kind of helps us get out of a funk. Unlike the Cowboys' final play last night with that Zeke Elliott playing center.
Well, I mean, if you were depressed about something, that had to give you a good laugh.
It did. It absolutely did. I
am so tired of the Cowboys being the dumbest team in the NFL every single year. It's like they walk in and Jerry Jones says, "Hey, are you a complete dumb fuck?" "Yeah, well, here's your star."
Here's your coaching job.
Have you ever seen more just flat out just dumb shit? Yeah, I mean,
this is a great play design. I don't know. Look at this.
I love how whoever, I love how whoever lined up in front of Zeke was just like, "Oh, well, I know what I'm doing."
Right? I know, right?
This is really stupid.
Where is this play going? That's what I don't get. That's what I don't get.
I think the idea was probably for Zeke to just kind of brush off and maybe get a little pass dump to him right there, And
or
But he ends
I
up
read
with like a
somewhere
defensive
that
tackle in front of him that's just like, well, I'm just going to bowl him over so he can't do shit.
right. I read somewhere that the play was designed to throw to this guy right here, this number 9,
Oh, yeah.
which they did. But then if you watch the plays, Dak actually runs dead sprint for that guy. And I think it's supposed to be a lateral at that point, and Dak's supposed to run down the field. That's what I heard, but man, that was terrible. Although I guess Kellen Moore got a OC or a head coaching interview today for that beautiful play. So
For Denver? Where's he
yeah,
interviewing at?
probably.
Denver?
I don't. I think it was Carolina, which would that would be poetic justice.
Well, I'm really not a fan of him or McCarthy. McCarthy's just another yes man for Jerry Jones. I mean, and we really just need Jerry Jones to die, I think. I think Jerry Jones just needs to fucking die.
This is my favorite Bill Blank, by the way.
Maybe his son, like his son seems to have a little bit better idea of the fact that he doesn't know everything. Like,
well, his son's the one that talked him out of drafting Johnny Manziel, for goodness sakes. So
yeah.
I mean, that's a good example of.
Yeah, he's got his son seems to, because Jerry Jones seems to me like he wants to be in charge of. I mean, he would coach the team if it was acceptable. I think
100%.
He wants everything. He wants to be in charge of everything, and I mean, I suppose he is in a way.
He is.
Yeah, I mean, it's his team, but like, the last time that the Cowboys were halfway decent at post Super Bowl wins was when Bill Parcells took over.
Right.
They were in the dumpster. Bill Parcells took over, got them back into the playoffs. And then Jerry was like, because Bill Parcells was in charge of everything. Bill Parcells was in charge of personnel. Like, Jerry gave him the keys, and look what happened. But Jerry just can't do it. I mean, do you see other owners getting interviewed in the fucking locker room after every game?
Nope.
None.
No.
Every single game, Jerry Jones is getting interviewed in the locker room afterwards.
It's because they know he's good for a soundbite. He's good for ratings.
He shouldn't even fucking be in there.
Yeah, I know. All right. Well, now that we've lowered Bill's anxiety, I'm going to take our first break from one of our sponsors, Brown Dogs Farm Hot Sauce and Ranch. They are located locally here in Norwalk, Iowa. You can visit their website at www.browndogsfarm.com. We're going to hear a little ad from them, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about sports a little bit more and find out if it can be an escape for us in our anxiety. So stick with us through the break.
My releases.
Brown Dogs Farm are Norwalk, Iowa-made hot sauces and dressings. Brown Dogs Farm was born out of the dream to emulate the simple life of Rob's grandparents, who inspired him with their hard work and abundant gardens. Rob and Amanda set out to create a unique blend of fruit and pepper that would satisfy the part of the brain that craves great flavor without sacrificing the spice of the peppers. Sweet, but still packing heat. With combinations like jalapeno green apple, habanero peach, cherry rhubarb reaper, and other great flavor combinations, there is a spice and flavor that is right for any party or get-together. BDF also has homemade versions of their classic and spicy ranch that are one of a kind. You can order all of those and more online at www.browndogsfarm.com and ask your local grocery to stock up.
All right. So Rob and Amanda Prohaska, they do a good job over there. So
oh yeah, get you some sauce. I've known Rob for a long time.
Have you?
Yeah.
Rob's a big sports fan.
He used to bartend at the High Life.
Yes, that's what he said.
I want to say 15 years ago, maybe. That might have been that long. You see him all the time, man. He was a great dude. He's a great dude.
Yeah, he is. And we thank him for sponsoring. So before that break, we were talking about sports and whether or
Yeah.
not that's a release or an escape. You said you played baseball, and you had that summer that you were having a rough summer. Did baseball give you a break from that though? I mean, did you feel like that was when you were in control and didn't have any worries, or did it give you
No,
that
it
break?
was well, this all happened. Baseball season was over. I think
Okay.
that's coincidentally kind of why I wasn't busy anymore. But
Sure.
I'm not what I don't like, which I guess we can get into later because we're kind of on the sports topic, but like
Oh, we can go on whatever way
yeah,
direction you
well,
want to
there's
go.
that whole, there's the whole thing about staying busy, keeping yourself
Yes.
mind occupied and blah. Well, you can't always do that. Like, to me, you got to find out how to do nothing, how to feel okay when you're doing nothing. Like, to
Yeah.
me, that's the key. Like, can you sit there and binge watch 3 episodes of something and not feel guilty about it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I guess I'm kind of an anomaly because for me, like, my biggest motivator, I think, is laziness. Like, I want to get to be as lazy as I possibly can. So, like, I want to hurry up and get done whatever I'm supposed to get done so I can hurry up and do nothing. I really enjoy my children.
I swear to God, you and I might be twins.
Like, and so the more I have to get done before I can chill, that's the more anxiety I have. So to me, let's cut out having to do a whole bunch of shit.
Right.
Like, let's do what's necessary. But I've got that luxury now. I'm a single guy now. I don't have any, my son's is 20 years old, but as far as sports being a release, and part of what inspired this for me was what's going on with Patrick McCaffrey. When I saw everything going on with him and his anxiety, and I'm really glad we've gotten to a point where he's able to just say that and not play for a little while, and nobody's riding his ass about it. Just 10 years ago, if he would have came out and said that, people would be telling him how big of a pussy he was.
Right.
And there's still people doing it.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that are doing it in an ironic way, which to me makes it even more so now. It's getting more normalized when somebody jokes about it in a satirical way. Like, they're making fun of someone who would make fun of him.
Right.
Yeah. Like right away when he said it, my brother looked at me, he was like, pussy, and we started laughing. Because it's not, we don't think he's a pussy. We're like making fun of the dude that would say that.
Right.
What I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
So
and you're right. There were people out there, but the majority of people that were supportive and that were like, good for him, and treated him like he was brave for that, because I think that is brave to
Absolutely.
do that. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. You're playing for your dad. Imagine the stuff that is probably said to his dad, or about his dad, that he, looking back when I worked for my dad, I put extra pressure on myself to perform even better because I didn't want to disappoint my dad, and I knew my dad was counting on me. Same thing with Patrick and Fran. Not only does he have his own demons, but now he feels bad because maybe he's letting his dad down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an extra layer.
Yeah, and to come out there and say, I need to take a break, I need help, that is brave. And the people that supported him, it was a nice change, because I mean, I would not have been shocked if people would have shit all over him.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, look at who was it Royce White, the Iowa State kid? Wasn't that the kid that had anxiety issues, like couldn't fly or something?
He couldn't fly, and he had some issues as well, and he was open about that too.
Yeah, but he didn't get treated like Patrick's getting treated.
No, he didn't.
Open about it, and he almost got blackballed. I mean, people didn't want to mess with him anymore.
He did when he went to the NBA. I mean, I think that there's some other factors. I think he at some point used that, but I don't think people were open to hearing about his struggles and what he needed as well. You know what I mean? So that's, Royce is a good example of that. I think the first one that I remember that came out and was supportive was probably Kevin Love with the Cavaliers. That was the first time that I remember hearing somebody talk about it and him being supported for that. And I remember at that time thinking, man, Royce White, 5 years before that was talking about this, and everybody called him a malcontent, and he wasn't doing what he needed to do, and he wasn't being cooperative, and so on. I don't know enough about the story to know whether or not that's true or not.
Yeah.
But the initial response to Royce White was not necessarily the same as what Kevin Love got, for sure.
Right. Well, and it's a lot of that's because there's always got to be a first one, and the first one usually doesn't go over the way you'd like. I mean, that's been happening forever with a lot of different things. I mean, you look at Lenny Bruce back in the day, people arresting Lenny Bruce outside of comedy clubs for saying fuck. I mean,
yeah,
at some point it gets normalized though.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at now. Hopefully, is it's just getting more and more normalized. But I think it's important for guys our age to be open, and like we said before, my dad's helped me, but I know that my dad wasn't necessarily open about it with his friends,
right?
You know what I mean, and so on. And of course, he's open about it with me because he's trying to help me in that individual, and he knows what's up. But his friend group, like one thing I think our generation of man, I think we're the first generation that openly, and this is like something I think we should be proud of. I think we're the first generation of men that are comfortable saying I love you to other men.
Yeah.
Just our friends.
Right. Yep.
Like I remember my dad making fun of guys who did that, because it was usually a drunk thing,
Right. Yeah.
Oh, my dad would always, he's one of those old East Side drunks. It's just like, I love you, brother. Oh, I love you, brother, all the time. My dad always made fun of that shit. And I'm sitting there going, well, that's the guy I want to hang out with.
Right.
The guy loves me. Why am I hang out with that guy?
It's funny that you say
friends, that. I mean, I remember a friend of mine moved away. I was barely 21, and I was with another friend of mine who I have my friends that I grew up with, that I've been friends with for 30 plus years, that we're all like family and been that way forever.
Right.
And, and then you have your other friends, each circle, there's just different circles. Right. And so this was like a friend that I became friends with through a job at the time. And we were just hanging out, and my buddy had moved away, been gone for about a year, and called me, and we were just having a normal conversation on the phone, laughing, whatever. And then we get done, and I'm just like, all right, man, I love you. I'll talk to you later. And I hang up the phone, and my buddy I was with was like, you say I love you to your friends? I was like, yeah, you don't? What the fuck? What the fuck's wrong with you? And so we were just talking about that this past weekend because of my son's fight.
Yeah.
I had 10, 15 people there, that I grew up with, and everybody's like cheering on my son like he's theirs. It's awesome to see. I mean, I had friends with tears in their eyes. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And it's my kid,
right?
And we were talking about it that night, how we're the generation, I feel like, that broke that.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend, Randy Jimenez, he is, I mean, you couldn't talk, you probably couldn't imagine a more definition of an alpha male, right? High school wrestler, state champion, hunts, fishes, every single time we say goodbye, it's a hug and an I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And has been for years that I can remember. And I do it now more with just friends that I see and things like that. It's just a normal thing now.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's a good thing.
It's I think it's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah,
it helps so much. I mean, relationship, divorces. You know, up until that point, that's like literally the only person you ever said I love you to was your wife, maybe your
right.
mom. You know what I mean? You just
Yep.
and then you get divorced, and now all of a sudden it's like you have no love in your life. But the reality is you have a whole bunch of it if you got good friends and good family. It's
Right.
not the same. It's not what you're looking for.
Right.
It doesn't make it suck less. It doesn't really make it suck less,
Yep.
but it makes it, doable. You can deal with it. You got people that are going to be around you.
Yeah, I think it
You're not
makes
just sitting
you
there.
vulnerable, and
Mhm.
that's okay. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to take away from it is it's okay to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And being able to I think going through a divorce from a man's perspective can really it changed me, right? Like I knew at the time that I was not a very good husband. I knew I wasn't kind sometimes. I wasn't,
Mhm.
I there was a lot of things I had to work on. And getting in touch with who I was and really working on those types of things, I knew at some point then that would make me a better person,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I think you have to do that when you're vulnerable and you're honest with what your mistakes were,
Mhm.
and you want to build relationships. I had a couple friends that I leaned on quite a bit, and just like you said, there was a love there. It's not the same, but
Mhm.
I knew at least I could have
You
growth.
matter in the world to somebody,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
That was right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a pretty low moment uh after I got divorced, and then I was dating a girl and that didn't work, and I can remember one night just sitting there just being I was unconsolably just miserable.
Mhm.
And out of the blue a buddy of mine called me and, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Man, you don't have any idea how bad I needed a phone call right now."
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it wasn't a it's funny, he didn't say to me, "Well, suck it up, you big pussy."
Right. No, he probably said, "What's going on?
Right. "I'll be over in
Tell
10
me about."
minutes.
Yeah,
I'll be over in
exactly.
10 minutes." And he was.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's not like you were sitting there with a knife on your wrist.
No.
You know what I mean? But
No.
it's still you still needed it. You still need it,
Right.
and
I
who
was pretty
knows?
in a pretty close space that I didn't figure that I mattered, though. I mean, that
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right. And then pretty
Yeah.
soon, if something doesn't give, you can get that low.
Right.
It's very possible.
Yep.
I mean, it's the thing about mental health in general is it's invisible. Unless you tell somebody, nobody knows.
Yeah.
So you have to be open. And to me, vulnerability is just another word for honest. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just that you're so on it. You're so much. I think people like to use the word vulnerable just because they lack it. They're like, well, I can't be that vulnerable. Well, so you can't be that honest? I mean, really?
Yeah.
It's you can't be that vulnerable because you don't want to be, because you're afraid to be that vulnerable. You're afraid somebody might judge you.
Yeah.
And that's the hump we got to get over, is the fear of being judged. When you say, hey, I'm struggling, I can't, my brain just ain't working right. I can't figure it out. I mean, you can just be, I remember being in a rut and just not knowing why. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm completely disengaged from everyone in my life. I'm distant,
Yep.
but really I'm sitting there in my own head the whole time. This isn't about anybody else. This is about me trying to figure out what the fuck is wrong with me. And I don't want to bother you with it.
Yeah. It's funny that you say stuck in a rut, because there was a time, a couple times a few years ago. um I couldn't tell Stacy why I was sad. I was just sad. And we would have conversations and I would say, I don't know why I'm sad. I have a good life. You know, I love my kids. I love you. I love our home. Our friends are great. I have a good job. I don't know why I'm sad. And I think I got to the point where I was like, again, it was that self-doubt and self-esteem where I was like, I wish I was in a better position in life. You know what I mean? I was looking at myself going, I'm 50 some years old. I still sometimes struggle financially. I see other people doing things that I feel like I should be farther ahead in life than I am. And it was my own self-doubt and insecurities that were getting the best of me. Even though I had a wonderful life and people would kill for what I had, you know what I mean? I was sad and I couldn't tell her why. And eventually we worked through it together and I've gotten better. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, and great that she, you know, she took that direction.
yeah.
You know, I mean, that ultimately was a part of the demise of my marriage. Was I was in that place that you were, and I was saying the same things. You know, I'm sorry, I don't. You know, I mean, she'd be like, "You don't want to do anything. I can't. You don't even want to go out with just me or whatever." But I would go watch an Iowa game,
Right.
and it's like, you know, why can you do that? Well, because that's an escape.
Right. Which is kind of what I was leading to earlier was you can escape in something like that.
I'm not dealing with real
right?
life in that.
Yes.
That's when I feel good. That's the only time I feel good right now, basically, is when I'm watching these games and I can fucking get completely engulfed in it and yell at the refs and throw shit and all that anger that I have inside of me that I can't figure out what's wrong and whatever, I can take it out with the highs and lows of the emotion of whatever game.
Right.
But yeah, when I'm sitting at home, I'm distant, I'm disengaged because I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't figure it out.
Yeah. And that's what's frustrating because you feel like you should have control and be able to do that. That's I think what's the biggest struggle for me is like I don't know why I'm sad and I'm angry because I can't figure it out and I should be able to figure it out. It's myself. Why don't I know? You know what I mean? And then you start to think maybe you're just a little bit crazy.
Well,
you know, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. Like,
right.
You know,
I know
we're
exactly
talking
what you mean.
health. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm losing my mind because I shouldn't be like this, and I am, and I don't know why.
Well, I remember that old saying, you know, if you think you're going crazy, you're not. You know,
Right.
I remember my dad saying that to me. Yeah, people that are crazy don't know they're crazy. That's what makes them crazy. So if you think you're going crazy, you're not going crazy. And there's a lot of truth in that. It's funny how those little things can help you though at different times.
Yeah.
And that's why it's key, I think, to bring it up and talk about it all the time, because whatever tool you develop at any given time that gets you through that period, later on, there's going to be something else.
Yep.
And that tool may not work for that time. So now you have to develop a different one.
Yeah.
And somebody comes along and says the right thing at the right time, and it just gets you through that moment. It might not even make sense. It might not even be a real tangible thing, but they just say the right thing, the right moment, and that can get you through the next couple little anxiety attacks you have. You know, you can say to yourself, whatever. I mean, I would do all kinds of shit. I remember as a kid, the different things you'd make up. Like, I remember I was, like I told you, I was like kind of suicidal because I was so afraid of dying.
Yeah.
And so then I used to try to talk myself out of being suicidal all the time. Like, and I remember there was a Mariah Carey song called I Don't Want to Cry. Do you remember that song? I don't want to cry. Don't want to cry. So I'd be running around in my head just going, I don't want to die. I used to sing that, just that over and over. Walking around, whatever I was doing. I don't want to die.
Well,
And then, I might not want to die that day.
there you go. Well,
Yeah.
at least you could sleep at night.
I do remember telling my mom one time, and I didn't, during that time, I wasn't sleeping. I would be up all night, and then I would like take little naps during the day, because during the day there were people around and I would get distracted sometimes, and then I didn't feel shitty.
Yep.
But as soon as I was alone again, man, forget about it. But I do remember one, and I don't know if this was Christmas Story related. I have no idea. But I feel like it was Christmas Eve, or it might just a random day. I don't know, but I was afraid I was going to wake up blind. So I told my mom, I couldn't sleep that night because I was afraid when I woke up I'd be blind. Don't know where. I don't know if it's because of a Christmas Story, and it's going to be the soap poisoning. But I do recall that, and I remember my mom laughing hysterically. My mom thought it was fucking hilarious, and I was dead serious.
And she's laughing at you, and you're like, "No, seriously, this is not a joke."
I'm fucking terrified.
Can we take this serious for a second, right?
Like, and I was too old. I was too old for her to do anything creative,
right?
If I was like 4 or 5, she could have been like, "Well, here, sleep with this teddy bear. He's an anti-blind fucking
right
teddy bear."
Like the movie Ted, they would just sing the thunder song when the when the lightning song.
She couldn't. Oh, and see, there's another one. I was terrified of thunderstorms when I was a kid. That gave me horrible anxiety. That's I feel like that's where it started, because I saw a therapist in my late teens, like after that initial thing, and he was trying to go back and see, he wanted to know when I remembered my first anxiety attack, how far back, and I could think it was, and it used to be a thing. Everybody knew it. I was terrified of thunderstorms. I would lose my shit. Like, I would puke, I would get sick, and when you're a kid and you say your stomach hurts, and everybody's, well, do you gotta poop? So like, as soon as clouds were rolling in, like if we're at the ballpark and clouds are rolling in, I was in the Kaibo trying to take a shit, like immediately. And so like, so it was always a thing. I remember my friend's mom just helping me puke behind the bleachers at one point.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I could not, and it was when after my mom married my stepdad, we moved to Texas, and that's how I became a Cowboy fan. We lived in a suburb of Dallas.
Okay.
And this was pre-kindergarten, and then I started kindergarten there.
Yep.
But then we moved back home. So I want to say it was that first summer there was a tornado, and the sirens are going off. Well, and in Texas, nobody has a basement.
Right.
So there's a tornado in Texas. You're like creating a bunker in the bathroom. Like, you're in the bathtub like it's a fucking drive-by shooting or something.
Right.
So like, you're in the bathtub, and they made it was just a big to-do, like me and my sister in the bathtub, and they got toys for us and stuff. And I remember my aunt just seemed like she was just terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her taking all the glasses out of the cupboard and putting them on the counter. None of it made any sense. I don't know what the fuck she was doing, but obviously it was probably something designed to not have a bunch of glass flying around if a tornado leveled the house. I don't know, because that's why you went in the bathroom. That's the only place with no windows.
Sure. Yeah.
But and so from that moment on, I was absolutely terrified. As soon as the clouds got gray, like it's gonna be a tornado, we're gonna die.
I will I will tell a story about my dad and how he alleviated my fear of tornadoes. We're going to take this break from Revelton.
Okay.
Revelton Distilling Company, Rob and Christy Taylor down in Osceola, Iowa. And then I'll tell the story of how my dad alleviated my fear of tornadoes and how years later I found out it was total bullshit.
I love it.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
Okay, we're back. We're going to tell this story. My old man was full of shit. Imagine that. So he had convinced me that because we lived in the Des Moines area, and maybe this is an old wives' tale. Maybe you've heard
Oh,
this.
is it the Rivers?
Yes, it's the Rivers story. Yes. You know what? And he was from the East Side, so maybe it's an East Side story. I don't know, right?
Yeah, because the rivers cross.
Right. Because the rivers converge. When two rivers converge, it's physically impossible for a tornado to form in Des Moines. And I was like, okay. So I never worried about a tornado ever. And I remember I was older and I told that story and somebody told me that was absolutely not true.
Yes.
And I was like, what? And they're like, that doesn't have a fucking thing to do with it. I was like,
the tornado can actually go in the water.
Right. But years later, I remember I was working at Wells Fargo. I was in this call center and I was working and Taylor called me. I was at work and she was worried about a tornado. And of course I told the lie because I figured that, it alleviates as a kid. Yeah. Let's pass on the lie,
Yeah.
And I got off the phone and this girl who was working with me turned around and she goes, "Did you just tell your daughter that tornadoes won't come in a place where," and I was like, yeah. I was like, it alleviates your fear. And she's like, "I can't believe you'd lie to your children."
Oh, Jesus.
You know what, lady? Fuck off, all right? Like,
yeah, what do you have, a dog?
Why don't you go back to my house and you can stay up with her all fucking night long while she's screaming bloody murder because she's scared to death of a tornado. If it helps me get a little bit of sleep, what the fuck do I care? She'll figure it out later and then she'll tell the same lie to her kids. So,
Yeah. I can't remember what happened where I stopped me. At some point I started thinking thunderstorms were cool instead of being scared of them.
It's probably right around the time you pull beer out and sit in the driveway and watch it come.
Well, I think, well, there was, I remember slowly some of it I think just came with age, after a while you've seen a billion of them and
right,
nothing ever happened. But then I remember, I think I was 17 and I tripped on acid and there was a thunderstorm. And after that, I was never scared of a thunderstorm again.
That's not an official endorsement to get over a storm.
Yeah, anxiety.
Yeah.
Just trip on acid.
We don't recommend that.
No, shrooms though, I do recommend. Acid might make it worse.
Mushrooms are, those are natural.
Yeah, totally.
Those are fine.
It's all good.
Oh, you mentioned your son in a fight, and that kind of leads me to my next my next topic I want to talk about. Best part of your last week. Man, that looked like a blast.
Oh my God, dude. First of all, speaking of anxiety, I didn't eat for 2 days leading up to it.
I saw that.
he, you know, I was so impressed with him. He was so much tougher than I thought. And I think that comes from it being your kid, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you wiped their tears for
Yep.
the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
and you know, I always feel like I kind of imparted a little bit of my anxiety onto him, you know. I worry about that too.
Oh yeah.
You know, it seems hereditary. I mean, my dad, me, you know. But he I mean, he hit way harder than I expected. He had a much better chin than I thought. I mean, he ate some shots and kept moving forward. But yeah, it was funny. Like I said, I didn't eat for the 2 days before. I was so nervous, like so terrified, you know, because, you know, well, first of all, you're supposed to protect your children.
Yeah.
And in this case, there's nothing. I mean, if we're in a bar and some dude hits him in the face, you best believe I'm jumping on that dude.
Sure. Yep.
In this case, it's ain't shit I can do, man. I just gotta
Right.
watch him get
Yep.
his ass kicked if he gets his ass kicked. And so, you know, I was super nervous, but it was just like when I was playing sports, you know, like I played third base, and after that first ground ball came my way, my nerves kind of went away. I just settled in.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the case with this. I mean, I had a couple of drinks before I went, so that helped a little bit. I was a little bit, but I didn't want to get all fucking shit faced and go to this shit face,
Right.
you know, be like Dennis Hopper, just
stumble out in the middle of the ring.
I'll step a mud over his ass. So
You need glasses.
you're gonna run the picket fence on him. But he
For all you younger listeners, that's a classic movie from the 80s. Hoosiers. You can go check that out.
But once the bell rang, I just wanted blood, dude. Like I wasn't even. There was no nerves, no nothing. I'm just like, kill this motherfucker. Let's go. And it was a blast, man. And he came out. I mean, he was gassed, and by the third round, he was fucking out.
Oh, I bet.
Gas. But he came out the first round just dropping bombs. Like his trainer was like, he's trained by Josh Neer, and I don't know if you know.
So Josh Neer is actually my nephew's cousin. My sister was married to his uncle for years. So yeah, I know Josh.
Yeah. So you know, I'm confident in his coaching or whatever. And I don't think Josh would have ran him out there if he didn't think he was ready.
Right.
But Josh was saying, like, he's just like because he did. I mean, it was just right hand, right hand, right hand, right. It was like it looked like Stone Cold Steve Austin. But the thing was, the kid that he was fighting was leaving that side of his face. He hit him once, and the dude wasn't bringing his hands back up. So just like, why not? Just
right.
And then, Josh was like, I didn't know what to do. I just started yelling, do something else. But yeah, I mean, he had this kid on his heels. I mean, this dude was backing up the whole fight. And then in the second round, he got a knockdown. And had he gotten that knockdown in the first round, he probably would have knocked him out. But I don't think he had enough left.
Yeah, he was a little gassed.
Yeah. Yeah, but
well, and he wrestles too, right? Like in a local pro wrestling.
He travels. He wrestles pretty much every weekend for some kind of promotion. The local one that he wrestles for is called IPW, and then there's one called Magnum Pro, I believe, that's in Omaha. And then there's another promotion that I know there's like they'll do stuff in Fort Dodge. I think there's something coming up in Knoxville. But yeah, the pro wrestling is what, you know, I started training him. I started getting him private training with Josh when he was a sophomore in high school because he was getting bullied. He was just getting picked on all the time as a little kid. So I started getting him just private lessons with Josh. Well, then he started doing jujitsu. He really liked that. So he was just doing full on jujitsu training. And then before he was even done with his senior year of high school, he had his first wrestling match. He quit all of the sports his senior year and started training to be a pro wrestler. And then like right before the school year ended was his first match, and it's all he's been doing since. And he's really been working his ass off this past year. He's really transformed his body. He's doing all the stuff. I was always pretty adamant with him, like, don't just be a guy that says he's a wrestler. Actually be one. Don't.
Yeah.
You know, in my profession, I've ran into a million guys that love to tell everybody they're a comic, but they don't actually do the stuff.
Right.
You know, so he's doing it. He's making the sacrifices. I mean, I hardly see him now unless I go to a show, you know. I mean, it's pretty rare. He works and then he's training all night and tired.
That's funny. That's another thing that I think I struggle with a little bit is the kids not needing us anymore and not having that connection with them anymore. I see the boys every weekend because they come home and you know, we do our thing, and you know, we'll watch wrestling, or we'll, you know, I'll take them to the card store because they like to go to, you know, we went to Mayhem Comics Saturday morning, spent some time together. But I'm super close with Caitlin, and I mean, she's killing it, teaching, you know, doing her own thing, but I barely see her anymore. And, you know, we talk, you know, once a day. She'll send me a snap or whatever else, but it's sometimes hard to realize that they have their own life and their own shit going on, and they don't.
I mean, it's tough to realize they're doing exactly what you fucking raised them to do.
I know, right? I know. Stacy and I were having a conversation the other day. The boys were here, and they were upstairs, and they were doing their own thing all day, and they came down for dinner, and I think Jordan was down there for like 3 minutes, and he ate dinner and he left. And she goes, "Hey, why don't you sit down here for a little bit, just for a little bit?" And Josh at one point kind of got huffy because he had shit to do, right? He did, and Stacy was all upset. And later on, I was like, you know, I guess we just kind of have to remember when we were 20, the last fucking thing we wanted to do was sit in the living room with our mom and dad and watch Wheel of Fortune and talk to them. Like, they did not, they don't, you know, they're 20 years old. They don't want to hang out with us. You know what I mean? And they only want us when they need something. Like when Josh wanted to go to the card store, I was his best fucking friend.
Yeah.
You know,
it's.
I love you, Chris. We, you know, this is great. Right. Hey, it's 6 o'clock. What time's the card store open? Not till 10. Go to fucking back of it.
Everybody's life is the cats in the cradle.
Right.
Every fucking buddy. No, it's funny. I actually had the conversation with my sister not long ago. She was kind of talking about not seeing, you know, her son as much. You know, he's moved out now, and you know, her daughter's a senior. You know, she's kind of struggling with all that, and I was like, yeah, I hardly see little Billy anymore, but it's a good thing. It means he's busy, he's occupied. Right. You know, I mean, don't you think it'd be weird if he was hanging out with me all the time? You know, like,
right?
He's doing his thing. He's doing exactly what I want him to do. I had the same thing with my dad. You know, my dad starts talking about, you know, his will and what's going to be left to who, and you know how basically just all of you know, his 3 kids basically dividing up everything and whatever else. And I was just like, Dad, your job was to make it so that we don't need any of this from you. So like, stop worrying about it. Fucking sell it all right now and spend it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, we're not supposed to need this. I get it.
Right. Yeah.
But you know,
your final act doesn't have to be one more way to take care of us.
Yeah. You've been doing it our whole lives.
You know what I mean? And, right.
You know, and I just now got to the point, you know, one thing about doing stand-up for a living and not being famous is it's a grind, and you don't make a lot of money. You make a lower middle class income if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And you got to learn how to live with that. The only reason I ever had property or anything was because I got married.
Right.
I didn't have the steady income where I could buy a house, and I could, I didn't have a paper trail like that.
Right.
I didn't have this paycheck coming every week or 2 weeks, couldn't really, finance a car,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. I would have to buy a car. I'd have to save and buy, and all that. Well, COVID forced me to start finding other ways to make money.
Right.
And, now I do as much comedy as I can,
Yeah.
but, now I've got some decent money coming in, and I can just do the shows I want to do. I don't have to grind it out. I don't have to go, 4 or 5 hours away for a few $100 anymore. I can say, fuck that, and just, I'd rather stay home and party with my friends. Like, I'm not trying to fucking get rich and famous at this point. If something happens, it happens. But now, it's kind of like growing up doing construction your whole life. And then you end up doing something else, maybe those last 20 years. But during those 20 years, you can go do side jobs. You can, go frame a house with somebody and make some extra money, and stuff like that. Well, I mean, comedy is like the greatest side hustle in the world when you've been doing it for 20 some years, because you can actually charge good money for shit. It's not great when you're starting out and you can only expect $100, $200 here or there every once in a while, but like I can actually, I can charge $1,500 for a private party and perform for 45 minutes where my dad would have had to lay brick for 12 hours.
Right.
So it's a pretty awesome deal. And it's not like it's not in the cards, but it just, I had to find a way to keep my house after my divorce, and it's financially the smart thing to do. I mean, I had retirement plan. I got to have something. I got to have,
you got to be an adult.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I hate. That I hate the whole, I remember something, I was talking to somebody and I was just like, it's always got to be more. It's like, it just more. And well, that's part of growing up. No, fuck you. That's what you tell yourself because you gave up. Well, I had to grow up. What? Yeah, you had to give up is what you had to do.
Right.
Like, my son watched his dad do stand-up comedy for a living his entire fucking childhood. And he ate, he was clothed.
Yep.
Everything was fine. Yeah, no, I couldn't go on vacation every year.
Right.
We didn't have a family vacation every year. Does that make me less of an adult than you? You know what I mean?
No. And it's funny. It's funny how these conversations, Bill, that we're having tonight lead to things that we have talked about, because with this job loss, I've had a few people ask me, when are you going to just go all in on podcasts, and if that's what you love and that's what you're enjoying? Mm-hmm. And, part of me, my adult brain goes, well, I'm not in a financial position to do that. You know what I mean? I have certain responsibilities or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And Stacy and I were having a conversation last night, and I have an opportunity to maybe work at a job that's for a nonprofit that is very fulfilling and very rewarding and may not pay a lot of money. And, does my heart want to take that? Yeah, because it'll do a lot of good in a neighborhood that needs it. And I'll be able to give back, which is something that I, am passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
But is the smart thing to do that, or should I go find a job that pays a shit ton of money, and we can go on vacation or whatever else? And she said to me, just so you know, if you choose to go work at that other job that's more fulfilling, and you're happy every day, and it's not as much money, I will 100% support that, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, because you're happy every day.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so much better for the people you live with.
Not be a miserable prick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to not bring that shit home with you.
It is. It
I
is.
mean, when you're just fucking miserable with the majority of your day. I mean, that was the thing when I, before I met my before I started dating my second wife, I was like, I could live off of $600 a month if I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a buddy's basement, and paid him rent, paid my cell phone, paid my child support, and that's all I had to worry about. That and eating.
Yeah.
But it's like I met Rob. I had $3 High Life cheeseburgers a lot.
Yeah.
But like, I was doing what I wanted. I was happy. I did what I wanted. I didn't just do what I wanted for a job. I did what I wanted all day, every day. I did whatever the fuck I wanted. Nobody was telling me anything. And that was probably the happiest I've ever been. And, now it's like, shit, I don't got to worry about anything but myself.
Right.
So I'm just going to have as much fun as I possibly can.
Right. Yep.
And I'm going to spend my money on convenience. I'm going to spend it on helping, I'm going to help people when I can. And, I'm not going to miss any more Iowa football games. I'm going to be in the stadium every week.
That sounds terrible. That offense. When they gonna fire Brian Ferentz?
Oh yeah, because Iowa State's offense was lighting the fucking world on fire all season.
Oh, look at that! It's time to go. It's time to. We'll have plenty of time for that. Bill, this has been great for me, great for you, I think.
Oh yeah, me as well. And I think one thing that we should mention, this can serve. I hope that we can, this will grow and we get people participating live and stuff like that, because a lot of people don't go to therapy because of the schedule. I mean,
right.
Therapists are a 9 to 5, just like everybody else. That means you got to find time off work and different things like that. So we'll be recording this at 9:00 on Monday nights, and it can be a therapy session for people. Be just
100%.
Kind of like a group, like an AA meeting.
I've got the comments turned on all our streams. So as we build an audience and people want to ask us questions, they can throw those comments in the chat, or send us a direct message.
Absolutely.
If you want to stay anonymous, just send us a direct message and we'll talk about it. But that's kind of what we want to do is this is going to be more than just me and Bill. Yeah. It's going to be our audience. And
we want it to be a community.
That's right. Absolutely. And Bill, I want to thank you so much for bringing me along. Actually, it may look like we might actually have a comment. Oh, well, there you go. Joel Clement says congrats on the new podcast. Joel's a good buddy of mine. Nice. He went through the wars with me at Wells Fargo, so Joel's probably got a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel, for congratulating us on paying for a link.
That's right.
It's like those guys. They'll do like you can pay like $500, right, and rent out the Stoner Theater, and then charge for tickets and do a show, and you'll put your picture on the sign or whatever, and people will be like, "Oh, congratulations!" Like, he fucking paid somebody. It was paid $500 to four-wall the room. Congratulate! Oh, he made it. He's at the Stoner Theater. You don't know how this works.
All right, so everybody, if you find us on here, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and our Twitter. We will be the audio portion will be on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeart. Make sure you rate, as Amy from Hot Mess Happy Hour, our other podcast, says, rate us a 5. Otherwise, keep that shit to yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
We're
on iHeart. They're gonna bleep us.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, I ain't fucking.
No, I'll mark it as explicit. Fuck those fuckers.
Yeah, I agree.
So
can't have real therapy if you can't cuss.
That's right. Being from the East Side and having East Side roots, it's not a real discussion unless somebody drops an F-bomb.
That's right.
All right.
man. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Bill.
Doing the heavy
All
lifting
right.
here.
No problem. We're going to close out, and everybody have a great night.